The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. Great to be back again. Today, my privilege to have Logan Ransley, co-founder of Landlord Studio, here with us on the New Zealand Tech Podcast. How are you, Logan?
Good, thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Great to have you. Great to have you here, and looking forward to hearing a little bit about your fast-moving startup, and delving into some of the other sort of news of the week. So there's a fair bit to get through. We've got our esteemed Prime Minister is stirring things up in the US. So we'll delve into a little bit about that and how that crosses into the tech world. There's some stuff there around cybersecurity and Russia. Drones. Always like talking about drones, especially when there's actually some I don't know, some actual disrupting technology that's actually starting to come through.
The broken down plane, I've just heard.
Oh yes, just this broken down plane. And the world's smallest remote control robot. So some of the things that we'll delve into, and of course hearing about Landlord Studio. So let's jump in. Jacinda Ardern is tripping around the US. I see quite a few. Quite a delegation that has gone with her. And bits and pieces of news starting to come out, seeing it in the social media feeds, people that have been meeting with her. I think she's got a meeting with President Joe Biden coming up. So
quite a few different
lots of activity, right?
And lots of all sorts, yeah.
Yeah, which I think this is good for for New Zealand, good for New Zealand tech to have these opportunities where our political leaders get out, and particularly at that Prime Minister.
I think it puts us on a bit of a stage as well. Might actually attract some talent, maybe in the future.
I think you're right. Like as sort of there's more and more of a sort of a story around New Zealand as from multiple perspectives. So there's the perspective of it being a beautiful country to visit from a tourist perspective, but then once you sort of start stacking in these other bits and pieces, and as long as the narrative's reasonably positive, then that can have a good flow on, as you say. And I think attracting talent to either work for New Zealand companies remotely is helpful, and as is attracting talent to actually come and be based here, buying New Zealand products and software. There's lots of good things that can come out of this.
And going from a traditional agricultural export into more of a tech export seems to be like a good decision, I guess, from a future perspective. So I think it's a good move.
Yeah, and look, I hope we will see more news like we heard about Meta or Facebook selecting Parkable to help them with managing their car parks when you've got 60,000 or so employees, and you start going back to working from offices, then managing car parks using innovative New Zealand technology. Hey, that sounds good to me, right?
Yeah, the software industry in New Zealand, and we can kind of talk a little bit more about this, but I think it's definitely starting to mature a little bit as more companies start and more companies exit. You kind of get this recycle of funds and money going back into the ecosystem. So it's good to see that there's more talent and more ideas and more solutions coming out, and particularly just being exported out to the wider world.
Definitely, and there's so much to be said for the expertise and experiences that are gained with with each of these startups or tech firms that then can flow back into the New Zealand sort of tech sector.
Yeah.
And so, in theory, it becomes easier for us to compete on that global stage because we end up with more and more people that know how to take us there and what to do and how we win these sorts of deals. So, yeah, I thought that one was was really encouraging. And of course, we probably all heard about the speech at Harvard University there, and quite a big deal to to give these speeches, commencement speeches, and
Yeah.
and so on, the opportunities that come up, and um, the honor that goes with it. It's great, but there was a tech aspect here, which is in line really with the Christchurch call, and the sort of reiterating of recognizing the huge power that the biggest tech players, particularly the social media companies like Meta, who we just mentioned, that power that they have. And so there was certainly a for those that have caught that, you would have recognized that there's a an ongoing message there from the Prime Minister. And look, I think it is really important that we keep discussing these things, that we hold these very powerful players to account.
Mm.
How we do that, part of it, I guess, is giving speeches. Part of it is also going to be legislative, and that's
It's a bit of
probably
a
easier said than done, and
yeah,
it takes a long time for these things to go through government. So
and a bit of a grey area. It's kind of a
yeah, well,
there's multiple views
you've got
on
you've
this,
got a
and
lot of different views into what's the right approach. And going back to the terrorist attack in Christchurch, and at that time, I remember discussing it across a range of media. There was sort of this expectation that these things are really easy to address with an algorithm.
mm,
And well, first of all, you've got to define what it is. What is the algorithm going to do, and in what context? And
yeah,
like, this stuff is not easy. And as you say, these sorts of things that we're sort of expecting, technology to handle. The technology can only do certain things, and it needs to be needs to be directed. So I think there's going to be a lot more discussion on these topics for a long time, but it is important.
there might be this view that government organizations expect that tech can do more than it actually can to try solve some of these issues with a simple coded algorithm, using kind of slang word, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
There might be a misunderstanding there, but who knows?
Well, and these misunderstandings can be quite broad. I remember discussing this with I think it was with Lisa Owen on Checkpoint, and there was just this expectation. Well, look, this is on Facebook. This should have never
Yeah,
happened, and the technology can handle it. And you sort of you
just
think
build it, ship it.
around how we use technology and what technology can do. I mean, it's incredibly flexible, and if you can allow someone to put a video game online that includes shooting, and we look at gaming. The first person shooter is a really big segment of gaming, and people are going to stream these things online. And so, on one hand, that's all good, and then we're sort of saying, well, something that we've never ever seen before, but might involve blood, or might involve guns, or might involve this and that.
Mm.
Can you get an algorithm that can just wrap around and figure out what that's, when a bit of footage comes online, and instantly decide and categorize and not block the things that humans wouldn't want blocked, but block those other things.
That's challenging.
Yes. So, but look, I think it is important that the discussion happens. We keep these things at the forefront, but we also need to be somewhat reasonable with the expectations, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying, we shouldn't be pushing forward, we shouldn't be expecting change, but we have to have some balance, right?
It's a hard one because topics like that are very important to bring to light to try come up with solutions to solve them, and figure out ways of using and stopping the abuse of the platforms like that. And yeah, you're right. We need to continue to try figure out solutions to do that. And I guess that's why these conversations are important to have. But yeah, I guess it can just take a little bit of time and may need a bit more creative input from everyone around. So
Yeah, well, there's a lot we're expecting technology to solve. We're expecting it to solve all of our financial woes as a country. You know, get rid of poverty. Yeah, we to a degree we look to tech as something that is as magical. In many ways it is, but most of these things are going to take some time.
yeah, for
Now
sure.
onto another topic. Scott Technology have been in the media announcing a pretty big deal, $56 million deal. And Scott Technology, of course, involved in the world of automation and robotics in the workplace, and so they do some really really cool stuff. It
I
was
was
you that
amazed.
mentioned
Yeah.
when they started. Was it 1913?
1913 was when they started, which is quite amazing because that's quite a long time to be going and coming up with various engineering solutions and pivoting, and now it's a publicly listed company. But yeah, it's quite a big deal.
It is, and look, I think it's encouraging to whenever we come across these sort of scenarios where well-established firms have over a long period. I mean, they've done an incredible job over over 100 years now, but for them to be at their this sort of scale, winning $50 million plus contracts, that's I think is pretty exciting. So in this case, it's with
Canadian company.
Canadian beef processing plant in Alberta. I think there's about 2,800 staff there, and basically a non automated environment at the moment. And so by bringing their technology to bear, this is going to have a huge impact on their overall profitability. So really good to see. And these are it's areas like this where often it's becoming quite hard to actually find the workforce. So sometimes that really pushes these decisions, and may well have been the case.
I think all
here.
these small wins, well, big wins that New Zealand's having is just great to put us on that stage again and just really get some eyes, track that talent, etc. Because I think the more relevant we are, the better we can kind of serve the world in that way.
Yeah, agreed. Now, so on this sort of cybersecurity front, I suppose, is where is one way we think of Cloudflare, because of the services that they provide. They've caught some attention though, and probably most well known for their DDoS mitigations, or distributed denial of service attack capabilities, or of protecting against those. Now, where they've caught attention is that they're still operating in Russia. And, of course, what we're hearing from Ukraine is a very clear message, is that tech companies need to get out of Russia. Now, the the whole thing of how it works when a country gets put very rightly so into I don't know what you call it, into sort of the dog box as a country. That's not probably a strong enough way of describing it, but there are these huge sanctions obviously being put on Russia, and there is that expectation that tech firms get out. So I thought it was interesting to read how Cloudflare is saying no, we are staying in Russia.
Yeah,
and I thought, well, how can you justify
and
staying
you
in there
mentioned
right
this
now?
just before. It's an interesting take, or an interesting kind of justification.
Yeah, well, it seems that part of Cloudflare's role, they don't have any staff there, although they do have servers based in Russia. Part of their service offering is a free service, the 1.1.1.1 DNS service, and this has, to a degree, been very helpful for Russians being able to. I think you can get an app that will set your DNS accordingly, and that's been in the I think in the Apple Store for Russia. And this has actually allowed you to get access to uncensored Western news, whereas we know that in Russia the news narrative has been very tightly controlled.
They've got a
with
single
propaganda, right?
organization that controls most media. I think there's only one news organization that's not state run or state owned, and they're probably still very much under
Well,
the
heavily controlled when you look at
heavily
the laws that
moderated,
they've put
yeah.
in place, which you say the wrong thing and you can get a long time in jail. So yeah, there's been a real move for the tech world to get out of Russia very, very quickly. But look, I can see this perspective, and it certainly makes some sense to me. But I don't know whether everyone's going to feel the same way when there's just this sort of blanket expectation to get out, and whether there will be some businesses who are going to take a different approach and just say no, you shouldn't be there. But to me, this comes across as Cloudflare being good people, doing something that actually helps with free speech in a country that is very tightly controlled what is said. But when we were chatting before we started, you mentioned there's some maybe negative stuff out there.
Yeah, well, I was
about,
going to say
Cloudflare.
they've-
What was it you'd come
they've
across?
been under the microscope, I guess, a bit in the past around providing services to terrorist organizations, Al Qaeda, etc., etc. But they've never really pulled out, and what they said was they've never been asked to pull out either. They've never had a lawsuit. They've never had any legal, stepping in saying that they need to stop doing that, which is interesting when they're servicing these types of groups or servicing that type of country, etc. So there might be more to the story than we know.
Yeah. It's interesting. When you first mentioned it to me, I'm thinking, well, as Cloudflare are so big, this would be like sort of saying that terrorists drink Coca-Cola, therefore Coca-Cola is bad. But there is that aspect where, you could see for a domain name who's providing those services, or where there's that distributed denial of service attack protection, and if Cloudflare is providing it, you can see who that is. But how do you draw those lines around, and how do you define that? And if, as you say, what they're doing is legal, and they've not had any lawsuits.
They actually had a bit of controversy around the Christchurch as well, because 8chan was obviously streaming, and they're also, I guess, hosted or protected by Cloudflare services. So yeah, it's widespread, but it's a hard one.
Yeah, Who do you work with, and who are the once companies get to a certain scale, are there any good companies anymore? Yeah, realistically, like
Yeah.
even in New Zealand, we look at our big telcos, and we kind of love to hate them. It's like, whether it's a customer service issue, or we feel that they've charged too much, and so on. So, and the bigger and bigger you get, the more of a target you are, because you're more well known, you're more
There's more eyes on you
looked at
naturally.
And no business is going to please everyone, but actually also we do need to hold firms to account, and we want to spend our money with people doing good stuff, not bad stuff. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what more we hear on Cloudflare.
I did notice that Xero pulled out of Russia as well, just being relevant to NZ. But I guess for the businesses of those Russians using Xero, they would have had a bit of an impact, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So how do you do that in a way that doesn't, destroy people's livelihoods, right? So yeah, I would say I don't know how I don't think you can measure it specifically, but the issues and the war, crimes and so on that we're hearing about aren't carried out by a majority of the population. The population are victims. So if you've got someone, maybe they've started, let's say it's a tech business somewhere in Russia, and that's how they feed their family, and their business breaks down because the technology tools that they were relying on pulled the rug out from under them. That's not necessarily a good story. So it's there's a way in which these things in theory should be carried out, and I don't know the answers to how you get that stuff right in any sort of a humane manner. And look, I understand the other perspective is look, actually, we just need to be really, really hard to to have an impact and have any chance of stopping the war. So now drones. Love to talk about drones when they're doing cool stuff, and we get all the sort of the PR things. And a few years ago it was Simon Bridges and Domino's Pizza delivery in New Zealand, and all very very cool, and made some good good press. But we're still not getting pizzas delivered in New Zealand by drone. But we are reading about Walmart in the US, and that although it's still a small percentage of the population, it's probably actually similar, or maybe even slightly more than the New Zealand population that they're talking about covering. So Walmart have said that they're bringing the convenience of drone delivery now to 4 million US households through a partnership with a company called DroneUp. And so, yeah, they're going to have the service offering, which they have been doing previously, but they're extending that. The idea is to be able to get products to people in 2 hours or so. I think that's probably the shorter end of the scale. So
there's a really interesting thing about this, because I read about this on Reddit, and one of the comments was, are there drones piloted by an actual person, because people didn't really know. And then one of the comments was, I live in Arkansas next to one, and it is a pilot. So there's literally a pilot standing next to the house, and they're flying these drones to the house.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an interesting situation, but
What? So you saying that the pilot's at the destination
are at the destination.
or
Well,
at the pickup
who
point?
knows? But
Because that doesn't sound as though it would
unless they're
make
satellite
sense, right?
controlled drones, but I guess they'd be in range of these drones wherever the pilot is. So.
Yeah. Look, I mean, in the early phases of these things, certainly you're going to get a higher level of, people involved as we move through to more automation. I don't know the specifics, and people will make their comments on on Reddit at the like, but
Yeah.
you expect ultimately for this type of technology to work, it's
got to be a
very,
scalable,
very high
right?
level of automation.
Yeah.
This is not a military sort of drone environment where you can, you're gonna expect that we need to keep keep that sort of control and so on.
Yeah, I guess as a way to prove a concept, you could start with a drone pilot, but if they're delivering to, the entire of the US household, I'm not sure if there's enough pilots to do that
No,
all time of the day.
Exactly. So yeah, look, I find this fascinating because it is, in the scheme of things for New Zealand, it is, 4 million households, and that's more than we've got here. So yeah, put that into a New Zealand context, and of course, in the US, different states have different laws and so on. So at this stage, I would imagine this is not something that Walmart or any other company in the US could just do across the entire population. And then, of course, it depends where you live. You're in an apartment, and what do? It turns up when you're not expecting it. You're not there, and there's a whole raft of things to consider. And that's without going into getting the safety piece right. And if you're flying over people's heads, carrying stuff, and it was one of the article. I think it might have been the press release from Walmart that I was looking at, and I was sort of scanning it through, and I saw the mention of refrigerators. Suddenly, it popped into my head: a drone carrying a refrigerator over your head. And then I stepped back a little bit and realized they were talking about a delivery to help stock your refrigerator, rather than drones flying around at the sort of scale where they're carrying refrigerators. But who knows where we'll get to in another decade or so. But look, we are at that point where this sort of technology that's been you see it slowly progressing. Then it actually gets to a point where it becomes real, and it can do hopefully do a really good job, and that the upsides far outweigh any of the downsides of the technology. But it does seem a long time coming after all these sort of little demos and so on to see such a big number of people or households being served by the technology. And still, I'm not sure of the reality. We're not seeing a huge amount of data in terms of how many deliveries are they making. This one will cover 6 states: Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Texas, Utah, and Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And those will be markets where Walmart, I'm sure, is in heavy competition with Amazon.
Yeah.
So this could be something that helps them. But of course, if it works for them, then the technology, possibly even the same provider, might serve Amazon. And of course, Amazon have got their own work going on in this area as well. But reading the notes is sort of they're talking about delivering light stuff, right? So get your paracetamol or some nappies or a bit of bread flown to you by air. This part mentions actually as short as 30 minutes delivery of $4 US. So what are we talking? Probably about $7 New Zealand if you threw a bit of GST in there. £10. So what's that? 4.5 kilos roughly. So that's actually that's a bit of stuff you could.
That's
you
quite
could get.
that would be on the heavier side for a drone, I'd imagine, or for a standard size drone. So,
and it's gonna consider size and whether it's actually sort of safe for.
Wonder what their primary
drone to
objective
drop it
is,
off.
though. Like, is it to shorten time of deliveries, or is it to reduce costs deliveries, or maybe they're trying to deal with the COVID, repercussions in the shipping industry and stuff like that? But
yeah, I do sort of feel as though we are probably still in the phase where it's as much as anything to experiment with the technology. Does it work, and how much can we scale it? Is it 10 deliveries a week per store? Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000? I'm picking it's probably going to be at the lower end of that at the stage, but you get it working, and that convenience factor is. I mean, we love convenience. Look at Uber Eats and all of the other similar services. Actually, I should mention DoorDash, which was a service I tried out in the US, probably going back, I don't know, 5, maybe 6 years.
I remember,
in its early days. In fact, they've been around the best part of a decade, so it could have been a lot more than that. I remember trying them out in the US, and possibly it was even ahead of Uber Eats, if I remember correctly.
They came out before,
and being in Silicon Valley and trying out the tech. Now, we know them now as I think the largest food delivery company in the US. So they deliver more food than Uber Eats. Now, I can't remember whether it was DoorDash or whether it was one of the other players, but I have a feeling it was DoorDash, that when they started, they were more than food delivery.
Yeah, they used to deliver almost anything. It was like a postal service, peer-to-peer kind of postal service.
So we've seen some interesting, I guess, evolution of some of these new, heavily sort of software-based tech companies as they've experimented with what their different offerings are.
I think Uber offers it now, though. I'm not sure if they offer it here, but they're doing almost like courier.
Yeah, they do offer
systems.
it here, and in fact, we started using it for varying things before it was a formal service, because you would find most Uber drivers, as long as you didn't have a package that was sort of labeled illicit drugs on it or something, would reasonably happily go and pick up an order, or pick something up from one address and take it to another, much faster than a normal courier, and probably in certain cases, probably more cost effective. I don't know how the numbers stack up today. I did it in the US once. I think it was before they had a formal delivery service in the US, and I think it was at a conference. I needed something from a printer. I'd organised some printing and needed to get it across LA, and I sort of looked at the idea of me catching an Uber or a cab across LA, which is a nightmare for roads, and so to go one way so that I could come back the other way, and it soon dawned on me that let's try it out. And LA's maybe an area that's known for probably a lot more illegal movement of goods than some other parts of the world. But the driver was quite happy, and someone came out and gave him the package, the goods. It was it was printing, it was legit. I can assure you. Then you could watch it on the app, and way it goes. But we get so used to these things, don't we? And that, I think, this drone delivery, there's got to be a point in time where it flips over and it actually just becomes
normal.
normalized,
Yeah.
just like Uber has, just like Netflix. And these were things that in New Zealand we sat for a long time and sort of we looked at them happening in other markets, and then they were here, and then it's just
It kind of
completely
seems like a crazy idea
normalized.
at first, but then ultimately becomes quite a normal thing.
Yeah.
Another example of that is the catching of the Starcraft, Elon Musk's new Starship.
Yeah. I mean, there's some incredible stuff going on. Now, talking of space, we were reading recently around Lonestar. Now, this is not the restaurant chain in New Zealand.
I thought it was when you first mentioned it. I was,
Lone Star Data Holdings, and their unique plan is to put data centers on the moon to back up the world's data.
and they call it the first crypto satellite. I'm reading.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still struggling to get my head around this. It might just be all a little bit too early for me, but I guess if Earth were to explode, and you're storing your data off planet, this could be really, really good. But
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure when we will need that. So yeah, there's a fair bit of commentary online, and apparently they're closing a $5 million seed round at the moment. So it'll be one to
Keep an eye out.
watch. But on the other side, there are going to be new businesses in space, and whilst at the moment it just seems like madness and science fiction and so on, there's a lot of what we take for granted today that if you roll back the clock 20 years you would look at and you would like, no, that's not gonna work. But
yeah, I think
hey,
access to space is just creating a whole new industry and you're seeing it with all these different businesses coming out, and quite a few New Zealand based ones as well, which is really exciting. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, the last thing wanted to squeeze in just on the sort of tech newsy front was I came across this video online referenced as a tiny robotic crab, and apparently the smallest remote control robot, smaller than a flea. So these are absolutely tiny suckers, and suckers isn't the right name for them, but I was just trying to work out what I call these little fellas. But anyway, a round tick-like body. That doesn't sound very nice, does it? 10 protruding legs, and they can bend, twist, crawl, walk, turn, and one of the videos shows them jumping as well. We see this sort of stuff in science fiction, but this is that progression, isn't it?
It's kind of
As
scary.
someone has this crazy, scary idea, and then over time, actually, the technology catches up. There are creative, innovative thinkers that manage to pull some of these things off, or bring them to fruition. Maybe not as they were originally shown off as being something scary, but something that may be a very helpful tool to the world in the years ahead. Are you scared by these things, or do you think this is going to play out well?
It's amazing engineering. Don't know the practical use for them. Feel like they could be abused. Personal opinion.
That is always the flip side with technology, isn't it? They're they can be used for good, they can be used for lesser good. So let's hope for very good stuff. All right, so I really want to hear about Landlord Studio. So tell us the background.
So brief introduction. My name's Logan, one of the co-founders of Landlord Studio. We're a property management app for DIY landlords.
What do you mean by DIY landlord? Is this just that they're
yeah.
not outsourcing the property management, so they want to?
So typically in New Zealand, someone who buys a rental property will hold on to it, and they'll hold on to it particularly for capital gain purposes. And then that's how they kind of make their money. The actual rental income side of the story is more to offset mortgages for being able to invest for the capital gain. Whereas overseas in the US, which is our primary market, most property investors will invest in rental properties that cash flow from day one to create a cash flowing business.
Right. So it's a cash positive business. It's generating an income for them.
Very little capital gain on property in the US. There's obviously some caveats to that, but
hence why their housing is so much cheaper than ours in a lot of cases.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of high density housing as well, which we're only just starting to see here now, where, we've got terrace homes going up in order to fit more housing in a smaller space. That's quite common overseas. It's very common in the US. Most property investors will buy a building that has 25 units in it, and they'd probably spend, $2 or $3 million buying that. But 23 units is, 23 lots of rent coming in every month. Whereas you spend $2 million here on a house and, it's one set of rent coming in. It's quite a different landscape.
So how did this come about? So you're in New Zealand with something that maybe doesn't heavily suit the New Zealand market, and you're looking at the US.
By accident. So I'll kind of step back a little bit. My business partner, Charles, he IT software mobile developer. He was living in London, and he was just contracting, earning some good money. And he decided that he was just going to buy some rental properties when he came back to New Zealand. But being a mobile developer, wanted a solution primarily app-based to be able to manage these properties. And when he looked on the App Store, couldn't find one. So he just built one himself, coded a real simple version up. And then put it on the App Store. Just thought, why not? And then, lots of American users started downloading it. And by accident, it solved a really specific niche problem in the industry, where every property from a tax perspective, from the IRD, IRS tax perspective, is treated like a different business. Okay. So you have to record your income and outgoings for each property. And then you report that.
So you can't treat it like a hotel, like this is one big
exactly.
Business,
so
you have to slice it up.
So when you get up to 25 properties, you're essentially having to create a profit loss statement for every single property, and that's how you report it. The problem is that traditional accounting software only is designed for a single business entity.
Yeah.
So when they try to use software like Xero, QuickBooks Online, it doesn't actually work. So they kind of go from a spreadsheet when you've just started investing in rental properties. You might start tracking it on there, and then once you get a couple more, like the workflow processes, they become a bit more harder to manage. You need software to start automating that. Naturally, your go-to is QuickBooks Online or Xero.
Yeah, I'm sure Xero didn't want one customer having 25 subscriptions to cover
they love
cover
it, right?
a building. But in the scheme of it, it's probably not going to actually.
And they've built some tools to allow multiple property tracking and things like that. But ultimately, it's been designed for an accountant and it's single business entity. So what we did was we created an app that allowed you to track your income and expenses on a property by property basis. Very simple concept. Turns out that a lot of people, felt that our product really solved quite a unique problem in the industry. So our first 1,000 customers came from app downloads without any marketing, no real product development, no real strategy behind acquiring those users. So it was quite interesting.
That's a great story. That's very cool to
Yeah.
acquire 1,000 customers like that. So where are you at in the journey? When did Landlord sort of Studio start, and how many customers do you have now? What sort of revenue are you at, and what are the
So
upcoming?
that was done around 2016,
Mm.
2017. 2018, we did our first family and friends kind of seed round. Raised a couple of $100,000 from family and friends, and we put together our first, established company with a few people. And then essentially from there, over time, we've been starting to further build the product out to make it more applicable to the different landlords in their journey, and actually solve more of the workflow issues, because accounting's just one. There's multiple. There's dealing with tenants, there's maintenance, there's marketing, etc., etc. So we've kind of built out this big product suite now, stemmed from the accounting piece. Now we manage over 33,000 rental properties on the system, a little over 4,000 customers, primarily US based still. So yeah, we're finally hit the 7 figures, so which is great for a kind of aspiring NZ tech startup. So our next focus is the US market, and we're going into US market to try prove out a bit of a strategy around that accounting as kind of go to market channel.
It's really exciting. And do you have something that the tenants use as well? Is that something where there's an app or web
Ye-
portal or something that for the tenants?
Yeah, so it primarily started just landlord focused, but we got a lot of product feedback and a lot of questions asking around adding the payments piece in, which is facilitating direct debits from tenants to landlords. So we built into the system a way to do that now. So that basically brings the tenant into the equation. So they actually have a portal that they use as well now, where they can connect their bank account, set up automatic payments, pay for utility bills, etc. And then it all flows through our system, and we do all the financial bookkeeping in the background, all the payments flowing through to the landlord's bank account, etc. So that's the kind of the first part. The ultimate vision is to really bring the tenant and involve them more in the whole life cycle, because rental properties is not just the landlord, it's ultimately the tenant as well, and being able to create a great experience for them. So everything from them being able to let the landlord know that there's issues with the property so that they can get fixed, obviously payments, and then some of the products around moving in, moving out, etc. So
Seems like there is a huge amount of potential, a lot more ahead for you. So that's great.
yeah, the market's very large in the
Yeah,
US. On one hand, it's quite intimidating on how to tackle that. The other hand, you get just 1% of that market, and you've got quite a valuable business. So
yeah, great. And some people would probably be curious about what's the technology behind the scenes that you use. What's your tech stack?
yeah, so we use Microsoft Azure as our kind of tech stack, .NET Core, and then we've got native apps both on iOS and Android, and then our web portals all React. So great experience for everyone involved, especially because we started as like a mobile first focused product. We always felt that that's the way people were moving their lives. is to be working on the go. So everything that we've designed is from a mobile first kind of approach, and that's kind of been a part of our ethos.
Oh, great. Yeah, look, I think there's a lot more we could delve into, and I had some other notes here I wanted to ask, but I think we're sort of out of time for NZ Tech podcast today,
Yeah.
so we might have to have you back for another chat, Logan, and
No
and
worries.
delve in a little bit more. But yeah, that's really exciting, and all the best for what's next. I know you've got an upcoming trip up to
The US,
up to
UK.
the US, and
Yeah, just say for everyone listening in, just look out for us, and we're always looking for talent. So feel free to reach out, and if it's something that they want to get involved in, the startup industry in New Zealand, then yeah, we're here.
fantastic. And where are your people? Are you sort of spread out, or mostly around Auckland?
Majority of
or-
our engineering team is Kingsland, so nice and central, good community around there. And then marketing sales is Kingsland, Wellington, and US. So
Excellent.
mm.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on the New Zealand Tech Podcast this week, and we will look forward to catching you again next week. A huge thank you to our show partners, Vocus, or should I be saying 2 Degrees now? As that merger has completed, we've got Vodafone, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. And thank you to you for listening in, and thanks, Logan, for
Appreciate it, Paul.
joining us on the show.
No worries. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.